Hello again. I think this will be the last video I do regarding LPs. My recovering or re-sleeving of the flood damaged ones are going ahead. I've just reached the end of the box of 100 black covers, so had to order a new box of 100. This time I've gone for white covers. Slight change in the way I do it. I now put the glue on the spine and apply the printed out label. Let's say that's going ahead quite well. Just over halfway through, and have broken into the new box of white album sleeves. Now, LPs. After my last video, and as the title might suggest, I've had contact via my web contact form from several people who wanted a more in-depth discussion about things, and also came up with I've had a large number of selections of LPs from people who say, you've got to listen to this, this is great, this is a really good album and it's nicely recorded and it's got a lot of detail and it's everything you wanted. So I had a look at all the suggestions. The caveats I had, of course, had to be that I wasn't going to pay more than £15 for an album. That seems to be a reasonable price as far as I'm concerned. Had to be something that was a bit different, a bit new to me, something that I'd find interesting. So sifted through the selection of people that sifted through the suggestions that people have made, had a listen on YouTube to some of the tracks and some of the albums, and made a selection of 5 from there that I thought sounded quite interesting. So thanks to Laurie for the first suggestion. And this is Ayana, or Anya Johnson. She's a cello player and a vocalist. She also does percussion and sort of things. And this is with the London Symphony Orchestra Percussion Ensemble. This is called Ocean Floor. Quite interestingly, from my perspective, it's produced with what they call bio-vinyl, which is a posh name for basically they use recycled vinyl. Now, when I was last into LPs, one of the selling points of Premier labels was the fact that they didn't use recycled vinyl. It was all virgin vinyl and never been used before. But anyway, I gave it a listen, and I've got to say, this is black vinyl, impressively quiet noise floor. Probably the quietest album I've bought in recent months, if not the quietest, especially when you consider the first part of the LP is actually a spoken monologue with the sound of the sea in the background. Obviously, there's a lot of difference between the sound of the sea and groove noise. The groove noise will be easily identifiable underneath that. but impressively quiet. Some stunning percussion effects in there. The vibraphone work was really very good, as is her cello playing. Her voice is good, but not, I would call, you know, the singing is secondary. The instrumental work is probably the premier thing on there. But a very interesting album, and I've played it several times, and it's certainly one that I will, I think, play quite often. Now, to Greg for the next one. This is also a cello player, and this is Callum Ingram, and the album's called The Man. I'd classify this as folk rock or folk. It's quite nice. Not really my cup of tea, but again, on listening to the clips on YouTube, certainly I found it interesting, a bit different from what I normally have. And some interesting tracks on there. And again, something I think I will play quite often. So quite enjoying that. And now 2 suggestions from Peter. The first one is a band I've never heard of before, and that's My Life Story. They've got probably half a dozen albums out, and based on this one, certainly something that I will be looking out for again. Not much information, no inner sleeve details, so what you see is what you get on there. I would classify this as probably Britpop, and again, nicely put together, nice sounding, and an enjoyable album. His second suggestion was Charlie, or I think they used to be known as Charlie's Cuckoo or Charlie Cuckoo. This is a double album, and it's called Anthology, and unfortunately it's on marble print or marble effect vinyl. But there's a lot to enjoy on here. Now, again, it's a band I've never particularly taken any note of, never really heard anything before. But again, based on this, I will probably look out for second-hand CDs of their albums, because there's some really good stuff on here. And I enjoyed that immensely, listening to that. And the last one that somebody suggested was Stuart Copeland's Police Deranged for Orchestra. Now, I would normally run a mile from orchestral arrangements of pop songs, for want of a better word, but for the fact it's actually done by Stuart Copeland, who I have a lot of respect for, and he has done enormous amount of work with orchestration and composition. So I bought a copy, and again, very well recorded. There are some issues with it, as there are with all of the albums from my perspective, and I'll come on to that in a minute. But I was quite interested in this one because he's using a full orchestra. And again, I should also explain that A lot of these are limited edition copies, as is this one. I don't know whether he's got extra time on his hands. But signed copy, done the way it should be, not signing the sleeve itself, which actually, if you're a collector, reduces the value, but putting a signed card or piece of paper inside is a better way to do it, because some signed copies are actually worth less than unsigned ones because they want a pure album cover. But that's quite interesting. Quite enjoyed that, and we'll certainly be listening to that again. But as I've suggested, there are issues with all these pressings. Now, they're all fine. I enjoyed all of them. But one of the issues I have is that the dynamic range is not there. Like on the Stuart Copeland one, the crescendos are quite recessed. They don't hit you hard. The soundstage is small. Everything is restricted between the speakers. I expect to have a wide expanse in front of me when I'm listening to stuff. Now, you could argue that that's fine for a small ensemble. But even then, I expect to hear something a bit wider, a bit more expansive coming out of my speakers. As a oh, I know what we can do. As an aside, or as part of it, years ago I bought the Teloc Omniisk. Now, the Omniisk is probably the best setup and test LP set you can buy. It is absolutely astonishing to listen to, and has some wonderful effects on there. But one of the things it has, it goes through Britain's Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra, and it details out every group of instruments. They play a theme, and if you close your eyes and listen to them, what you get is the positioning of all the instruments within the soundstage, both left to right and front to back. First violins, second violins, cellos, double basses, and so on. And that's what I expect to hear when I'm listening to orchestral work. So what I expect is the first violins to be way over there, second violins, cellos, double basses, and so on. And timpani and percussion right at the back, and so on. The classic arrangement for a symphony orchestra. And it was all there on the Stuart Copeland orchestral one, but it was all in between the speakers. And I don't know whether this is something that's done because most people listen on earbuds these days, or most people don't actually invest in a super duper hi-fi system, or they listen on, obviously audiophiles are in a minority these days. But I think that LPs would be aimed at, I would hope, audiophiles, especially when you consider the pricing of it. But this is obviously not so, and obviously they don't make a special master for LPs and one for CDs. It's all the same, and it's this really narrow restriction in the soundstage and this loss of dynamics that I'm most upset about modern recordings, and that includes CDs as well. It's not just restricted to LPs. And so that's my LP journey over. I'm glad I got these last 5 suggested, and thank you to all those people that contacted me and said I should listen to these. There've been some really interesting ones there. But all along this whole process, I have been getting CDs as well. And this is the last bunch that I've acquired. Quincy Jones and Miles Davis live in Montreux. Now, this was quite interesting. This was just before he died, and there's some superb playing on there. And it's mostly Gil Evans compositions they're playing. Now, that's the only one of this stack that was bought new, and that cost me $4.99. All the rest here were purchased second-hand. These two were 50p. Tina Turner's Private Dancer. Fine. Madeleine Perriot, if that's how you pronounce her name, Perriot, Half the Perfect World, beautiful sounding, nicely recorded, and 50p. And again, it's not so important here about the extended soundstage, because this is quite an intimate sounding recording, so that wasn't a bad at all. The Who's Next. This is the only faulty CD. It won't play past track 14. I have to skip it on manually. I've checked and I can't see any damage on the CD, but there's obviously something there that's stopping it playing, at least on my CD player. It could play quite well on another CD player. Contacted the person I bought it from, or the company I bought it from, which is Music Magpie, who I use extensively, and they said, sorry about that, haven't got another copy, gave me a refund for it and said, keep the one you got. So it plays up to track 14. I have to move it on manually to hear 15 and 16. But then again, the original album only had 9 tracks on it, and I'm not really that interested in the previously unreleased tracks, because usually they're not that good, and that's the reason they weren't previously released. They didn't make the cut. Evanescence, Fallen. I quite like Bring Me Back to Life. Never really was interested in the whole album itself, but when I saw it up at quite a low price, again from Music Magpie, I decided to take a punt on that. The Clash, London Calling, a classic. I haven't got any Clash in my record collection, so I thought I'd get this. It's okay. I mean, there are some nice tracks on there, but not really my thing. And it's nice to have something in the collection that I can pull out and play occasionally, but not of too much interest. Of more interest, a Robert Palmer compilation. Some stunning tracks on here. Love Robert Palmer, and it's a nice way of putting some music on and getting that all those Robert Palmer classics. Now, Savage Garden, I love the track To the Moon and Back, and I've been looking out for a cheap copy of this album in particular, which has the track To the Moon and Back on it. and it came up. So again, a big thank you to Music Magpie. I should explain that all these albums from, or CDs from Music Magpie, the most expensive was £3 and the cheapest was £2 or £1.99 and so on. A band called Widespread Panic and an LP called Don't Tell the Band. Been looking out for something of theirs to buy cheaply for a while, and this came up. Again, perfect sound. Good band, worth looking out. Everybody tells me I should listen to Nick Cave. I should have some Nick Cave. I thought I'd get a best of, and I would sit down and I'd play it and see what people are on about. I don't get Nick Cave. I've got to say, I've listened to this several times and it just doesn't do it for me. I just don't get Nick Cave, and that one will be put in the pile that's to pass on to somebody else who does like Nick Cave and would be interested. And if I can't find anybody to take it, that'll probably end up being sold on. An album I've wanted for a while, from the Flaming Lips, and this is Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots. Again, for the artwork, I'd have loved to have this on LP, but, you know, as I said, I couldn't find it at all cheap enough. £1.99, and it's wonderful. So CDs from 50p to £3. LPs, all of these that I bought were suggested from other people, under £15. In fact, they were all under £10, to be honest, including the limited edition double from Charlie, Anthology, limited edition, 180 gram, marble vinyl. But okay, you know, it's nothing to be sniffed at that price, and the music was good. And that was £4.64, bought online from Amazon. So that's kind of like, I think, the end of my exploration in modern vinyl. Nothing's changed my mind, really. I don't think buying vinyl today makes sense. I said that at the very first video where I talked about vinyl buying, where somebody asked me they were thinking of starting a collection, and I just wanted to know why, because it just doesn't make sense to me. I certainly wouldn't have paid £30 for any of these. But in all these cases, in these instances, the LPs were cheaper than the CD. Again, another reason why I bought them. But, to be honest, if there's £1 in it, I'd probably buy the CD, knowing that I wasn't going to suffer from pops and clicks. I wasn't going to worry about warped records. I wasn't going to worry about having to clean them first and, you know, wearing out my stylus on my LP. So, no, it still doesn't make sense to me. I wouldn't encourage anybody to start collecting LPs if they wanted a physical format, and I would always advise people to go for CD. My genuine disappointment at these rather shrunken sound stages, after listening to these LPs and some of the more modern CDs, I had to spin some of my favourite albums. So I got took out my While Things Run Fast by Joni Mitchell, and soundstage enormous, back to front depth, fantastic, dynamics superb, and yet all of these no competition there really. Really quite disappointing. So I still don't like modern, I'll say releases, not pressings, because it doesn't just affect LPs, it also affects CDs in this day and age. And that's it really. I won't be pursuing any more LPs now. I'll still be looking around for the occasional absolute bargain, like the Charlie Double album. If I come across something that's absolutely unquestionably a steal, then I may go for that as opposed to the CD. But on the whole, I'll be carrying on buying new and second-hand CDs, which are usually available much more cheaply than the vinyl equivalents. So with that, I'll sign off. Let me know your thoughts as always. Thank you very much.